Governor, from a personal standpoint as opposed to a political or a government standpoint, summarize the last 4 years.
Well, they've been certainly interesting years for me, Mike. You know, I guess I woke up one morning after the election and realized that I'd gotten elected. That may sound possibly a little corny, and yet when you get involved in an election, you become involved in the accomplishment of a particular thing, and of course, the election and winning the election becomes important to everyone. And then after the election's over, and then all of a sudden you realize what's ahead of you. And it's been 4 years, I think, of growth for me personally. I don't believe that you can be given the opportunity to assume as much responsibility as is entailed in the office of Governor of Florida without growing, and I feel that I have certainly attained a certain amount of increased maturity over 4 years through the exercise of that responsibility, and they've been 4 interesting years. I can think of so many interesting things that have happened to me.
Such as?
Oh, I don't know. I think of the time that we were in the convention after I had just finished giving the keynote address in 1972, and we were supposed to come on at 7:30 with approximately 26 million live viewing audience, and as you know, it had a habit of drawing out in that Democratic convention, and they kept coming back and saying it'll be another 15 minutes, but we're picking up 10 more million. Well, we finally got the peak, and they said it'd be 60 to 100 million people live viewing it, and I got through it all right, and right after it was over, since I had started the beginning of the keynote talking about Cochise, some of the Indian members of the convention asked if they could express their appreciation for that reference. So I went down on the floor outside of the podium, and you have different groups where you have different badges where you go into different geographic areas on the convention floor. I left the podium part of it to go out and accept their feelings about our inclusion in reference to the Indian, and I went to go back inside the podium. Now, mind you, this was after I had just been seen by up to 100 million people live, and the guard was not going to let me get back inside the podium. You know, and I had to go get one of my security agents to vouch for me so I could get back in after. So never has anyone gone so high and come down so quick in a short period of time. But these are things that I think I look back as governor that they've been good years, and I'm grateful to the people of Florida for that opportunity.
Again, from a personal standpoint, when you're lying awake in bed at night, what's the one thing that you say to yourself, gosh, I'm really glad we got that accomplished?
I believe it would be something very general and possibly elusive, but I think we've changed the image, hopefully, of the office of governor from that which existed at the time I came in, and that's, I think, been a key to accomplishing some of the other things that we did, and to, I think, furnish some leadership, because the governor plays a very key role in what is often called the legislative process. If a governor is not willing to try to marshal a public opinion on a particular issue, many times it doesn't come, because the legislature is a large body. It's very it's varied with different interests, and it has an inability, I think, really to try to marshal public opinion except under exceptional circumstances. The governor has that, and furnishing that leadership and setting that tone, I think, has been the most important.
You're also very well known as a very intense family man. Obviously, this job, in terms of endurance and the hours involved, means you can't spend that much time with them as I'm sure you'd like to. How are the kids taking it, as well as Mrs. Askew?
Well, first of all, I think we have to be candid. I don't know that there are many wives who ever really feel that their husbands spend as much time at home and with the family as they should. So that to a certain extent, being governor may not be a great deal different than a lot of other demanding pursuits. But in terms of the adjustment, my children, one 7 and one 9, when we came to live in the mansion, have just about grown up in the mansion. They really only having fleeting memories of Pensacola during the 4 years. You see, 4 years between 42 and 46 are a great deal different between 7 and 11, for instance, or 9 and 13. So they've grown up, and I think that in a sense it's really been a challenging adjustment for them. I think they've done very, very well. I think that they're quite normal in view of the circumstances, because Donna Lou and I have wanted so much for these 4 years to be enriching years for them and not spoiling years. And they've become accustomed to things which they obviously are going to have to become unaccustomed when we leave. I think that my wife has had probably the most difficult challenge, as every wife of a governor has. I think it's a far greater adjustment for the wife of a governor than it is for the politician who's probably in politics to become governor. I think it's been a remarkable adjustment, and I think that she has grown tremendously in her ability to be able to handle so much more responsibility than that of the immediate family without really sacrificing time, you know, because I think that she's done a wonderful job with the children, and I just think between myself and between the children, we've never at any point felt neglected, you know, in spite of all the other responsibilities she has, and she really does. So all in all, I think that all things considered, it's been a good adjustment. It's been a good 4 years, but there's still ways in which we can substantially improve it.
What about the goldfish bowl aspect of this job? You're governor, you have the responsibilities, but in another sense, you're also a star. How have you handled this portion of the office?
Well, I think that there's a natural element in all of us that likes the adulation. I mean, I think that anyone who says that they don't, they say that only after they've gotten so much they've gotten tired. So there's a certain amount of it that I think is appreciated as a genuine expression of satisfaction of that which you're doing. Because most people, if they don't agree with what you're doing, they're not going to come up and want to shake your hands. But I feel, myself personally, it's been a very rewarding thing to me, because we've taken a lot of stands that have not been the most popular ones, and we've had to do some difficult things, and the genuine warmth of the response to our efforts during this past campaign meant a lot. But getting used to being in the open all the time with the visibility of a chief executive has been a very substantial adjustment for me personally.
We've looked at the last 4 years. Look ahead to the next 4. What do you want them to be like?
Well, I would like very much to maybe spend more time on the management side of the agencies under the governor's office. This is going to be difficult because we are in for some difficult economic times. The next session of the legislature, Mike, I believe probably may be one of the most difficult in post-World War II history of the legislatures, because we're going to have to do some cutting, I think the likes of which that we have not done in a very, very long time. We've had tight budget sessions, but when you go from sort of the fat to the lean so dramatically as we've experienced throughout this country and nationally, it's going to be difficult. So we're going to have to still give a great deal of attention to financing the needs of the state without new taxes, to have put our priorities in. But I want to spend some more time really on the management side of the executive branch, and I think with Jim Williams as Lieutenant Governor and Department of Administration, it's going to enable me to spend some more time than I would have otherwise done. And I look to Florida over the next 4 years, again, as very important years, particularly in the field of growth and the environment, ethics. So I think they're going to be really exciting years, and I frankly am excited about the prospect of being able to be governor for another 4 years, possibly in a little different way, with a little more confidence you know, of having 4 years behind me, and to know the areas that I can concentrate on, and then really have really some independent input. Whereas for the most part, in the first part of the administration, it's sort of a frantic collection of opinions. But now with a little confidence, I mean, I think that I can have a greater input, and it's four years that my family and I are very much looking forward to.